What's happening, y'all? This is your girl Megan. Welcome back to the Hood Astro Queen, to all of my returning subscribers. But if this is your first time joining me on today, hit that subscribe button right now, okay? Because you know you want to. Also, don't be scared to click that notification bell, y'all. It's there for your convenience. That way you will be alerted whenever I make a new post, okay? So, as promised, I am back with the second and final installment of my deep dive on Mr. Bernie Sanders. Now, during this video, I'm actually going to be touching on his natal chart, okay? And we're just going to be talking about sheer astrology here, which is what this channel is all about, yeah. But for those of you all who actually enjoyed my previous video and also enjoy politics and just listening to me run my mouth on just various random shit via trending news, celebrity news, politics, blase squaze, I have a separate channel. I'm going to link it down in the description box below. It's called Megan the Maverick. And on this channel, I literally discuss anything and everything that comes to mind. So all of my opinions that I might not make as available on this channel, be sure to follow me, follow that page, so that way you'll know exactly where I stand. Now, the weary hearted, the faint of heart may need not apply, may need not subscribe, okay? Because I am a hot mess, if you cannot tell. So don't subscribe and get all shook now. I don't do that. I'm just kidding, I'm just talking. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started, okay? So, Mr. Bernie Sanders, my granddaddy. That's my granddaddy, y'all. Y'all didn't know that, but I'm letting you know now. Little known fact, he's my granddaddy, okay? He was born September 8th, 1941 at 12:27 p.m. All they have is birth time, so that's good. In New York City. And yeah, so this makes him a Virgo sun, with his sun in the 15th degree of Virgo, and a Aries moon. So this actually, his sun moon combination makes a lot of sense. Let's see, what's his ascendant? He's a Scorpio ascendant. So because he's a Scorpio ascendant, his Aries moon falls in his sixth house. And it's also conjoined to his Mars, I want to say. Yeah. And that actually is a very prominent placement for a lot of politicians. Them having either Scorpio in the sixth house, which I believe that's Gemini ascendants, but then also because Scorpio is ruled by Mars and Pluto, people who have either a combination of Mars and Pluto in their sixth house is a very much a prominent placement for people involved in politics, as your sixth house governs your everyday work, right? Your everyday life, your habits. And Mars in particular, especially with it being in its home sign of Aries, is very comfortable here. And conjoined with the moon, it creates a very dynamic, a very pioneering, I guess is the word I'm looking for, kind of spirit. Somebody who is very expressive, somebody who has a lot of drive, a very hard worker for sure, especially placed in the sixth house, a lot of willpower. And these people tend to be highly productive. They tend to be just groundbreaking. And that Aries energy, because you got to think about it, it's the first sign of the zodiac, the first natural sign of the zodiac. And it represents somebody who is literally trailblazing uncharted territory, which you can actually describe that. It describes Bernie Sanders very much, you know, in his work ethic. And then also, given that your moon symbolizes your public perception, your reputation, it's easy to see him gaining momentum, gaining notoriety for his very, I guess you could say, original, maybe is that the right word I want to use, original contributions to the field of politics. Because before Bernie Sanders, nobody in the Democratic Party was talking about issues like health care for all, or some sort of Medicare for all, rather. Nobody was talking about tuition free college. Nobody was talking about, you know, taking a more non-interventionist approach to foreign policy. I mean, not in the Democratic Party anyway. Of course, you had the Green Party, but whatever. I'm not even going to get too deep in that. But yeah, he's definitely set the standard for a lot of these centrist Democrats to kind of follow suit. Unfortunately, a lot of them are very, you know, disingenuous in them remodeling their campaign to reflect his quote unquote, but he's still a trendsetter, very much so. And this aspect and this placement definitely represents that. Also, fun fact, and I just learned this recently, Bernie, and we like to make a lot of jokes about him being so old and, you know, he look like he finna die. This nigga old. But I actually recently learned that Bernie runs like, or walks or whatever, 3 miles a day. Now you have people in their 20s who don't walk/run 3 miles a day, which can definitely describe, you know, just him being very vivacious and why he seems to be in such good shape for his age, because he's very productive. He's doing a lot of running around. But to bring it back to his chart, his moon and Mars in his 6th house of Aries could definitely reflect that, because Aries is very much, it's very, physical. It's like a raw physical kind of energy. And a lot of people associate it with sports, you know, engaging in physical activity, combat, things of that nature. So when you place your Mars and your moon in your house of health, right? Once again, everyday routine, this could absolutely be somebody who is in pretty good physical shape and tends to engage in lots of sports and lots of very endurance building activities. So go ahead, Bernie, okay? And then also with him being a Scorpio ascendant, his first house ruler would actually fall into his 6th house, given that Mars is there, right? And this could once again reinforce his physical durability. So people who have this complaint of him being this super old guy, I would argue that this placement could indicate him being in much better health than Donald Trump, actually. I mean, I haven't taken a look at Donald Trump's natal chart, which we can definitely add that to the agenda. But just from the optics, the nigga don't look that healthy to me, okay? He's got a pot belly. I believe he even was quoted saying like he doesn't believe in exercise because he feels like if you use up too much of your energy, that's how you die quicker. Like, I'm not making this up. He literally, like Donald Trump, y'all's president said that. That's what he said. So I said all that to say that this aspect, once again, just reinforces Bernie being very, like, physically just durable. So I would argue that physically he's in great condition to lead this country. And that's just the truth said. Now, his son is in his 11th house cusp. I see this often with politicians as well, or just like famous people. Their sons can either be in the 10th house or 11th house. Your 11th house deals with your friendships. It deals with organizations, but it also deals with your goals, your dreams for the future. It can even deal with your career, like on a broader level, like your interpretation of your career and things of that nature. So with his son, and his son is actually conjoined to his Neptune as well as his North Node. So he's a North Node Virgo. And it's at his North Node is at the 22nd degree of Virgo. And I always say that 22 deals with situations where it's like either you're being controlled or you're controlling someone else. And it's opposing the Pisces in his 5th house. So this, and his midheaven is actually in his 11th house too. Now this could deal, like I said, with somebody who is famous. It could deal with somebody who is surrounded by, like, depending on what aspects his Neptune is making, somebody and his son, somebody who's surrounded by like nefarious, I guess you can say, figures, people who are kind of deceptive in a way. Let me see what aspects his sun and Neptune are making. Yeah, because his Neptune is trining Saturn. Even though a trine technically isn't a harsh aspect, I kind of consider it to be one, but that's a different video for a different day. Let's stay on task. So yeah, which can absolutely create somebody. Oh, and his Saturn is conjoined to Uranus, Uranus. Let's see. His sun is forming a quincunx to his moon. His Neptune is forming a quincunx to his Mars. So yes, this could absolutely signify him being in a field or being amongst people who are very powerful. This could also point towards him rising to a high level of status by way of his affiliations, the people around him. But just as these people have the opportunity to put him in high position, of status, they also have the ability to blackmail him. They also have the ability to take those things away. And there's this sense of, I find, especially when you have the ill aspected Neptune in your 11th house, there's this aspect of you being surrounded by very disingenuous people, because Neptune is the planet of deceit. It's the planet of illusions. It could signify things not really being as they appear to be. This could even be Bernie knowing a lot of secrets, him knowing where a lot of the bodies are buried as far as the establishment, his organization, the people that he's around, which is not an uncommon thing with politicians. But in particular with Bernie, I find this to be quite interesting, because those of you who have been following just his journey, I guess, over the past 3 years, or ever since the 2016 elections, there was this huge scandal when the WikiLeaks documents was released by Julian Assange, which kind of started this whole Russiagate scenario, because basically you had Julian Assange release emails, and we're not talking about Hillary Clinton's email server. That's a different situation. These emails were actually like legit transcripts of Hillary Clinton, a lot of the people within the Democratic Party, who I can't really think of their names right now, basically going back and forth, conspiring against Bernie Sanders. And there were very damning pieces of evidence in these emails. Like, these people were talking about, really just framing him, different ways to smear him, different ways to attack him. They would intentionally, set debates on certain nights, try to, keep him away from the debates. I believe Donna Brazile, who I think she worked for CNN, if I'm not mistaken, actually released some of the debate questions to Hillary Clinton prior to her debate with Bernie. So Hillary had a leg up on the debate. So they would do very funny, really weird stuff like that. And then also throughout the DNC leaks, it was revealed that Hillary was, money laundering, that she had bought out the entire wing of the Democratic Party. And they were literally functioning, the DNC was functioning as Hillary's like propaganda machine. Debbie Wasserman Schultz was in on it too. And they had a very strong and active role in snubbing the 2016 Democratic primary from Bernie Sanders. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there was even a lawsuit filed against them afterwards for this. But of course it got tossed out just because the DNC holds a lot of weight. And it's just a different story. But these were like, this is not Megan's opinion. This is not hyperbole. This is like legitimate fact, right? And so as a result, because the Democrats did not want a lot of people talking about this, because these are the same tricks that they accuse Republicans of doing, right? Of colluding, and they accuse Trump of colluding with Russia and meddling in elections, and they're participating in voter fraud, or is it voter fraud, or trying to prevent people from voting, or whatever the case may be. But these people, Democrats, were literally doing the same thing against people and candidates in their own party. They were snubbing their own base, and it made a lot of progressives just enraged, like highly upset. So I said all of that to say that, I found this to be really interesting in Bernie's case, because, his 11th house placement absolutely reflects a person who is in alignment with frenemies and people who are in high positions of power, but, tend to scapegoat somebody from time to time. Or you could be a victim of misinformation. You can be a victim of just people kind of just working behind the scenes or being very disingenuous towards you and your career and your, I guess you could say, your image. A lot of times will take a hit for it, or it could benefit from it, if you align yourself with the right people. So I thought that was very interesting. And also with your 11th house representing the collective and Virgo being the sign of service and somebody who works behind the scenes, this could absolutely reflect Bernie Sanders' humanitarian or his career as a humanitarian. He's been fighting for human rights for a very, very long time, since before it was like the popular thing to do, even back in the 1960s when he actually was on the front lines protesting, during the civil rights movement. Even he went to jail as a result of it. He changed himself to a black woman and literally was out there like, but the police coming straight from the underground. And then you got it bad because I'm brown. Well, I'm Jewish. You know what I mean? He was like, as opposed to a lot of the politicians who, talk a good game. And then when you actually look up the receipts historically, these motherfuckers are literally nowhere to be found. Bernie has a very long stemming history of serving others. And that service is really what that Virgo energy is literally all about. Okay. And serving the collective, right? That 11th house, because the 11th house is naturally ruled by Aquarius, and Aquarius is very much like a humanitarian type sign. These people are all about increasing the consciousness, awareness on a universal level. And Bernie Sanders, he definitely reflects that. And Mercury in the 11th house can bring about somebody who is surrounded by people who have very, I guess you could say, wavering loyalties, if you want to put it like that. So this could create somebody who, as I said before, is, especially when you add that Neptune influence and and it's adversely aspected with malefics, this can be somebody who is surrounded by superficial, dishonest people, and they can be often betrayed. And with his midheaven here too, this could be somebody whose image is up for grabs. So I see, moving forward, especially as we go into 2020, there are going to be a lot of means of attacks on Bernie Sanders, his image. And a lot of these attacks are going to come from friends. They're going to come from the people who are closest to him. They're going to come from colleagues. Okay. So, there's that. And this placement can indicate or point towards a person who is very much bothered and concerned with the way that the outside world views them. So, I personally, from what I've seen of Bernie Sanders, he doesn't really dive into like, what do you call it? Damage control. I don't really see him talk about like anything that is not policy based, but this aspect can actually point towards maybe a lot of the attacks on his character and things of that nature, and rumors, and him being in the headlines can have just a personal emotional effect on him. And then also I noticed that, especially with his Neptune squaring or making a quincunx to his Mars and his moon, a lot of times Mars and Mars, Moon, Aries people tend to have a hard time not expressing themselves and not expressing the way that they feel. And as a result, they can be very direct, very straightforward in their communication styles. And this is something that I've noticed about Bernie as well. Even though he only addresses policy issues, when he's kind of annoyed by a question, he visibly gets annoyed. When he's when he thinks something is preposterous, you can kind of see that he's very just direct to the point, which if you ask me kind of adds to his appeal, just in my Megan's personal opinion, because you feel like you're not really dealing with your Obama charm, I'm gonna charm your panties off, but then not really deliver any tangible substance or agenda items. So there's that. You could see that with his moon and his Mars in Aries. And it can also make him very much competitive, and it makes him a very hard fighter. And obviously that has to be true. He's come a very long way from being just this obscure politician from Vermont who literally nobody knew who he was. He was just like this random ass senator, and people were like, who the fuck is Bernie Sanders? And as you can see now, I mean, he literally has the entire Democratic Party following his lead, all the while trying to craft new ways to bring him down for the 2020 election. So he's doing something right. He is doing something right. Now, the most important aspect in Bernie's chart that I wanted to touch on is his Chiron being conjoined to his Pluto in his 10th house. Now, Pluto in the 10th house is a very common placement for lots of politicians because it encompasses that Scorpio. It reinforces that Scorpio ascendant energy too, because a lot of very prominent, famous people, powerful people have Scorpio ascendants. These are people who can draw very strong cult-like followings. These are people who, like I said, can align themselves with very powerful people. They can obtain very high degrees of power. Now, with his Chiron in this house, Chiron in the 10th house can symbolize somebody who they can reach a lot of fame and a lot of notoriety, but they tend to be late bloomers. So these people it takes them longer to achieve their desired outcome and reach a certain level within their career as opposed to other people, because these people can be they can be scapegoated, they can be sabotaged, they have the tendency to not be properly recognized for their work and contributions. And then when you add that to Pluto is all about, because I mean, it co-rules Scorpio, and Scorpio is the natural ruler of the 8th house, which symbolizes everything underground, right? Behind the scenes. So these could even be people who work very hard, very diligently in the background of something, and probably takes a while for them to get their just due, which absolutely embodies Bernie Sanders in his career. Now, on the more, I guess it depends on how you look at it. It could be negative, but this, especially Chiron in the 10th house, can produce somebody who is very rigid about their work. These people could be downright workaholics. And I mean, I guess that could be a good thing because it drives, Chiron in the 10th house drives people to get things done. It drives you to achieve more, especially the more you feel like, damn, I'm being ripped off here. Like, I'm not really getting what I feel like I deserve, my place under the sun. But a risk of this placement, of Bernie's 10th house placement, could be somebody who kind of gets a big head over time, or somebody who kind of loses touch with their ability to remain humble. So that's, if I could talk to Bernie Sanders one-on-one, that would be some advice that I would give him. Because, Pluto in the 10th house gives people, especially with him being a Scorpio ascendant and Mars being in his 6th house, his sun is forming a square to his Jupiter and Uranus, which fall in his 8th house, right, of Gemini. So this points towards him being just in law in general, in the field of law, in the field of politics, which is that Jupiter influence, right? Jupiter is the natural ruler of the 9th house, which governs politics, law, religion, spirituality, higher levels of education, all of that. But then subsequently, Gemini, with his Jupiter and Uranus being in Gemini, is the natural ruler of the 3rd house, which rules the media. It rules short distance travel. So this could point towards him having, or something in his nearby surroundings, be it siblings, cousins, neighbors, friends, being involved in very similar professions, or him kind of getting his inspiration to enter law or to enter government and politics later on in life by way of his upbringing. But then this could also create somebody who is in the business of exposing secrets or saying things or revealing things to the public, by way of the hands, by way of the mouth communication, that could potentially cause some problems for him. And the reason why I say this could potentially cause issues is, keep in mind, like I said, with him being a Scorpio ascendants naturally tend to elicit very strong reactions from people, just to begin with. But when you take into consideration that his ascendant is squaring his Mars, and it's also squaring his Uranus. Oh, Uranus is actually opposing his ascendant, actually, excuse me. His Jupiter and Uranus are opposing his ascendant. So this could deal with somebody. And like I said, that Scorpio energy is all about secrets. It's all about just secretive nature, and then when you have his Gemini being in his 8th house, Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury in the 8th house creates a person who really enjoys uncovering mysteries. It creates a very analytical mind, but these people can be very loose with, like I said, valuable information, right? Because they just want to share it, express it. And as I said, this could create a situation for Bernie to where he can find himself in some trouble, and particularly at odds with, like, it can damage his reputation. He could find himself on the negative sides of people who are affluent, really, it points to, he has a lot of themes in his chart of him being a truth teller, him being somebody who is used to, like I said, working behind the scenes, but they're very much dedicated towards kind of reorganizing the way people, or restructuring the way people look at things, and calling things like he sees it. And then finally getting into his lunar node placements. Like I said before, he is a Pisces South Node. So his South Node is at the 22nd degree of Pisces, which reinforces this theme of victimization. It reinforces this theme of him being controlled by, like I said, larger parties at play. And let me see, Pisces actually falls in his 5th house. And your 5th house deals with it could deal with your career, but it also deals with, like, your dating life, hobbies, children. So this could point towards somebody who, as I stated before, can find themselves very much susceptible to lots of scandal. They could be scapegoated. They could be surrounded by people who are, like I said, just nefarious characters, unsavory characters, especially with his Neptune being in his 11th house. And Pisces is co-ruled by Neptune. And then with his Jupiter being in his 8th house of Gemini. And Pisces is also co-ruled by Jupiter as well. So it's a reoccurring theme of him being, I guess you could say, the center of controversy. But overall, I see a lot of aspects in his chart that'll point towards him actually enduring a lot of trials and tribulations, especially with a lot of the Scorpio energy being placed in his house, like his career houses. You know what I'm saying? Because Scorpio is all about death, rebirth, renewal. So somebody who can undergo lots of scrutiny, somebody who can undergo just disastrous scenarios and reinvent themselves and come back stronger and better than ever. And I don't see anything differently for Mr. Bernie Sanders. So I'm not gonna, like I said, I wasn't gonna get into like every single part of his chart, but I did find a few things to be quite interesting, and I wanted to share those with you. So drop down in the comment section below. Feel free to share your comments as always. Make sure you practice unconditional self-love so that you can love others. And until next time,